job if I didn't mention all these wonderful events. So we do drumming circles on the first and third Sundays of every month. We have a second Saturday Songwriters Showcase series on, guess what, the second Saturday of every month. We do a fourth Friday Young Musicians Showcase on the fourth Friday of every month. As a matter of fact, we just had one last night. It was awesome. Where's Gavin? He went out that door. Okay, he ran away. He was here last night. And we have workshops for some of our annual projects like Polk Review and NICE, which we'll talk more about later tonight.
Hey, Alice, would you speak up a little bit more? I'm getting older every year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm usually so loud. I think it's because I don't have this microphone quite as close as I normally do. Is that better?
Yeah.
You really have to get right on these microphones. So let me move this a little bit. Oh, that's so much better, right? Okay. How's that? Now I can't see my book. This is really funny. Okay. Anyway, we also host feature concerts with talented musicians from all over the world. We've hosted musicians from Ireland, Japan, the Netherlands, France, Canada, and all over the United States. Most of our events are free. Our concerts, we do ask $15 donations at the door for the music concerts. We give 10 to the musicians, and we keep 5 for ourselves. Sometimes we give them our 5, our cut, because if the crowd's thin, we want to support them going to their next gig. So that's how we operate this place, on a wing and a prayer, and by the good graces of the supportive community, and that's you guys. So thank you for that. I would be remiss if I didn't say you can find out a lot more about everything we do here on our website, locuststreetsanctuary.org. And you can also sign up for our emails in the entryway. We have a sign-up sheet for that. Thank you again for coming out tonight, supporting Locust Street Sanctuary and the Polk Review, and all the talent that's represented in the book. I'm getting emotional. It's just a lot of talent. I really dread this part because I have to thank some people, and I get really emotional about thanking people. But if I stood up here and thanked everybody I need to thank, we'd be here all night, and that's crazy. So I'm just going to do short shout-outs for a few people. First, I want to thank the people who submitted images. They don't get to actually present tonight, but some of them were able to bring their pieces. And at intermission, I really want you guys to feel free to get up, walk around, look at them. Some of them might be for sale. You could ask the artist. Big hand for the amazing talent of our image submitters. It's a book. It's nice to have images in it. So thank you, image submitters. Thank you to Gavin. He cut out, so I can't really embarrass him. But I want to thank Gavin for welcoming everyone with his original songs and tunes. He is actually the creator of our monthly Fourth Friday Young Musicians Showcase series, which features high school musicians in an in-the-round style showcase. We're so happy to be able to provide this space for that series. It's a safe place for these young, talented people to hone their songwriting and performing skills. And so come out sometime on the Fourth Friday and see it. You won't be sorry. It was, like I said, last night we had one. It was amazing. So thank you, Gavin, wherever you went, for bringing so many talented young people to our stage. Big hand for Gavin, everybody. I have to thank our board member, Emily Songa, who is too shy to ever tell anybody when the food's ready, but she's done double duty tonight. She sponsored our international connection section of the book, as she did last year, and she's provided the international cuisine sampler plates tonight for you guys to enjoy. If you didn't get any, I strongly encourage you to come to Intermission to go see if she has any food left, because it's yummy. And I have to thank, and I'll get really emotional about this, so just bear with me. I have to thank the Polk Street Review's founding fathers, Bill Kenley and Kurt Meyer. For their continued support of this project. As most of you know, Bill and Kurt published the book from 2011 to 2014. And man, what an idea they had, right? It's truly a remarkable and unique celebration of noble skill. In 2015, as their own writing careers took off, they hosted an open mic for presentations, and there was no book that year, which made everybody really sad. And practically the first thing that I did when we got our not-for-profit letter in February of 2016 was contact Bill and Kurt and say, hey, how about if we start publishing the book at Logan Street Sanctuary? And God bless them, they said yes. And so last year was the first time we published the book. And they have been invaluable help. They fundraise, they spread the word. They are truly founding fathers of this publication. So let's hear it for Bill and Kurt. I have to thank another LSS board member, Sarah E. Maren. Sarah E. is the busiest woman in the known universes, but she still makes time to help me with everything we do here. She works full-time at Conner Prairie. She's active in community events like Nickel Plate Arts Annual Fairyville. She's a published author herself. Her second novel is coming out soon. Right? She's my co-founder on our NICE project, which is an annual fall event here at LSS. And she and her husband Spike are both just invaluable help to me on the Polk Street Review project.
Thank you.
Together, in one team or another, we create workshops. We reviewed all the submissions, and this year, 140 plus submissions. We read, reviewed, chose from those the ones to be published, proofread those, edited those. I can't tell you how many times we went through those things, and every single grammatical error and typo in the book is on me. And I guarantee you there are some in there. This past year in particular, I don't think I would have been able to put this book together without Sarah's help. So big round of applause for Sarah. Now, the first most fun part of the evening are awards presentations. I want to say a little bit about the criteria that we used to create the awards as Sarah joins me on the stage. Everybody, this is Sarah. Yay. Oh, I got to turn it off.
I'm stealing the mic for a moment because we have to recognize everything that Alice does. Alice not only does lots to keep Logan Street Sanctuary running, with the Polk Street Review in particular. Yeah, I helped edit, but it was really a lot of Alice, and particularly getting it uploaded up to Lulu, all that. Yeah. She is fantastic. She's a delight to work with. She's intelligent. She's humorous.
Oh my
God.
She's
blushing now. I wish she would blush purple. Then it'd be perfect. But anyway, a big hand for Alice.
For the awards, thank you, Sarah. You're too sweet. She's going to make me cry all over again. Okay. I just wanted you to know a little bit about what we use for the criteria for the awards. The first thing we look for is, does it match the theme? And this year's theme was fact or fiction, you decide. And we asked our submitters to think of the you in that as the audience, the reader. That was tough for especially image submissions, so we were a little generous when we were looking at images, because that's kind of a hard thing to put into an image. We also looked at quality of writing or art, and the third and final criteria is always, what's the connection to Noblesville? Because the one rule of the Polk Street Review is that the person submitting either has to have a connection to Noblesville, or the subject matter of what they submit has to have a connection to Noblesville. So with those three things in mind, we went through all our chosen, over 100 pieces are in the book. So we had to go through all of those to choose the awards. We ended up with 23 awards, I think, because we had some ties. It was really hard. Excluded from awards are anybody that's related to me or Sarah. And Bill and Kurt, sorry if you guys don't get awards. And anybody on our board. So of this people in the book, I think John Gilmore, Mike Stewart, Spike, they don't get to have an award. And so that said, now we're going to do the awards. Are we ready? Yes. All right. First up, we're going to start with honorable mention in the images category. We have a tie for honorable mention. We have Christina Oliver with The Spirit Within and Cynthia Baker with Tenacity. Christina's is the large piece in the back. Cynthia, do you have Tenacity here?
Yeah, it's right up here.
It's right up here. So at the intermission, you guys will be able to see these in the flesh. Okay, so come up and get your ribbons, please. We have ribbon awards, so as we call your names, come up and listen. This is Christina. And Cynthia, and come back in the light a little bit. Why not? Watch out for cords and stuff. But give them all a big round of applause. Thank you so much. We have to have a moment for photo opportunities. Thank you.
Yep.
We had another tie in the image category at third place. We have Sam Watermeyer, A Serengeti Sunrise in Central Indiana, and Annie Oberman, Praying. Congratulations. Come up into the light with you. Oh, sure. We like to save everything for posterity, so I thank you all in advance for the patience that you're all going to have while we do all this wonderful stuff. We have another tie in the images category with second. Second place ties were Catherine Anderson, Farmers Market Flowers, Perspective, and Gail Geisler, Magic Mushroom. Yeah. I don't think Catherine's here tonight, but Gail.
If you could scoot over a little bit. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
I like getting my picture taken.
And our first place in images goes to Jerry Dreesen for Cabin in the Woods, which is this piece right in front of us. It's perfectly lovely. So Jerry, please come and get your award. While Jerry's coming in and receiving his award, I just want to say that when we got this image, it really struck us that because of the type of artist that Jerry is, it really did draw you in and welcome you in a way to think about that theme and make it your own. And so, Jerry, thank you so much. We love it. Congratulations. So those are our image winners. Shout out to them. Okay, now we're going to move on to the song, lyric, and poetry category. We had one tie in this category with the honorable mention. We have Steve Vandewater with How to Kill a Mockingbird or Two Men in a Truck, and Gene Roberts, Spooky Town. I have to say, I love it when people submit song lyrics in this category because we can kind of inveigle them to perform, and it's really nice to have live music at an event like this. So the more song lyrics, the better. Congratulations, guys.
Could you scoot over just a little bit here? Thank you. Thank you.
I wondered why that light was changing color on me. Okay, so then we have for third place, Joe Mader, A Week in the Life of, which is a poem, not a song.
Can you scoot over, please?
Second place was Damaris Gaunt for Mirror. I don't think she's here tonight. Damaris, are you here? No, I don't think so. But round of applause for Mirror. First place in the category of song, lyric, and poetry is Susan Hoskins Miller with The Banned Book. I'll let you know that I will be reading her poem later in the evening because she has grandchildren that she's watching this weekend and she doesn't want to leave them alone for too long. So, thank you.
Oh, yeah, he'll be famous.
Oh, yeah.
If you could just tell everyone to stand at the edge of the stage there. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now to our prose category. We have two honorable mentions, ties again. It was really hard this year. Gail Geisler with Going Green, Gone Bad, and Greg Richards with Jimmy and the Stingray Summer. encourage you to buy the book to read the whole thing. Right over here. A lot of you guys know that Greg always submits. Sometimes I have to get him to do it at the last minute, but he always submits a Polk review, and it's always a blast. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, and then time for third in our prose category. Let me get my list here. Nicole Amsler with Home Invasion, and Mark Wilkinson with The Smoking and Joking Santa. We're having excerpts from both of those tonight, so actually I think Mark's is the whole thing, but it's going to be really, really fun times with these
Could I
guys.
get you to scoot over just a little bit if you
Well,
can?
there's the thing is there. It's hard to Second place in the prose category goes to Jerry Dreesen for Blood Brothers. Sorry, Jerry, you gotta come back. Good to have your picture taken again. Come over right by this stage. Yeah. This time I'm gonna do a little. I love Jerry. I love all of you. Jerry. Okay, we had a tie for first place in prose. We have Vivian Bell with House of Dreams and Jenny Kalahar with The Great State of Canada. Vivian's not here tonight, but Jenny is. Congratulations, Jenny. Thank you.
Do you need her a little bit more in the
Yes,
line?
please.
Yeah, so just a little closer to the stage. Perfect,
Yeah.
Jenny.
While she's getting her photo taken, I will tell you that Jenny's story is hilariously wonderful and innovative, so you will enjoy.
Thank you, Jenny.
And our last
Three.
awards of the evening, we have special awards and our award of merit. We want to do the special awards first. We give special awards for special reasons. I was going to say that. That's kind of dumb, though. Our first special award winner happened to also be our youngest submitter, and she submitted several pieces, all of which were really fantastic. I mean, honestly, amazing talent in this community and the young people. And so for no particular piece, but just overall quality of her submissions, the fact that she had the courage to submit to a fairly well-established publication like Polk Review at such a young age, and just to encourage the overall talent of a young writer. Maren Thornbury is one of our special award recipients this year. She had a color guard competition, and her father was planning to break all speeding rules to get here in time, and I told him, please don't do that. So we will just hold on to her award for her. Okay, our next special award goes to a first-time writer. We thought that all of the things that this person submitted, and I believe they were the written, the prose category, and images category, were all very creative interpretations of theme. And so, Al Geisler, if you'll come up and receive your special award. When you read his story, you'll know. Geisler, sorry, Al Geisler. Yeah. Our third and final special award tonight goes to someone who is a longtime contributor to this publication, even before Logo Street Sanctuary got involved in it, and always submits the most imaginative entries you could ever imagine. Well, you can't imagine. She's the only one that can imagine. Sandra Stewart, special award winner.
It's kind of like that special Academy Award they gave to Lassie, I think.
Could you scoot back just a little bit? Thank you so much.
All right, last but not least, our Award of Merit. This is the award that we consider best of book, if you will. And this year we were kind of blown away unexpectedly by the person who is winning this category. And I think that although every single submission we received, everything in the book is exceptional in its own way, this one kind of stood out to us because it was such an unexpected match to the theme. We really had never even considered something like this could come across our path. The Award of Merit goes to Celeste Williams for her poem, Vibrations in 7. Celeste, please come up. While Celeste is coming up for her award, she's going to read her poem at the end of the evening, but I do want to say that what was unexpected about Celeste's poem is that it deals a lot with race and issues like that in our country. And what was unexpected was we felt that in America, the fact or fiction nature of racism exists. I mean, for some of us, it's there, it's fact. And for others, there's a lot of people who say, oh, no, it's not. It's, there's nothing going on in our country. It's all great, So we just really felt that Celeste's poem struck a chord with both the theme and just quality of writing and everything. So Celeste, thank you for submitting it, and thank you for agreeing to read it later on in the evening.
Could I get you to scoot back a little bit? Back a little. Thank you.
Congratulations to all
Thank
our
you,
award
Celeste.
winners. Sorry. Tonight is the culmination of a year-long project, a project that took place in one of the hardest years of my life. And I want to thank you guys for bearing with me. Before we start the actual presentations, I just want to take a moment to honor my mother, Rodka Cavanis. She was the #1 fan of the Polk Street Review and Logan Street Sanctuary and everything we do here. She was always the first person to submit to both our annual NICE project and the Polk Street Review. In fact, she gave me her submissions to this edition in the first week of March, literally 1 week after I gave her our theme. Her health started failing right after that, and she passed away in July of last year. Her loss was, and still is, overwhelming to my family and me. She was my biggest fan, as moms always are. And she encouraged me in all the crazy creative things that I do, and some of you know what those things are, including taking on publishing the Polk Street Review. Her faith in me and having the support of my family and the help and support of Sarah sustained me through the past 7 months of finishing this publication project. My mom would so love this night. So in her honor, we want to dedicate this edition of the Polk Street Review and tonight to her. And let me say her name again. Rodka Cavanis. I love you, Mom. And as a special commemoration, before we start the presentations of the evening, I've asked Sarah to read one of my mom's submissions, Driving Lesson.
And that's not just a daughter's bias. Rodka was wonderful, and she's very much remembered tonight. Driving lesson. It is 1954. I am 15 and eager to learn how to drive. My father will teach me, and I have promised my mother that no matter how impatient my father becomes, I will endure it and learn to drive. My father has bought me a 1949 Chevrolet and had it painted black. I am thrilled. He tells me I must learn to shift before I ever turn the car on. That's how he learned to drive when he was in the compulsory Macedonian army. I practiced for weeks, releasing the clutch slowly, smoothly, and going through the gears. At last, with my father beside me, I drive around our neighborhood. We drive on Sundays. After several weeks, he says I'm ready to drive to Swan Island, where he works. It is a mile from our house. During the Second World War, thousands of people worked 3 shifts in the Oregon shipyards at Swan Island. But now, I can practice driving in the huge, nearly empty parking lots. We drive the half block to Going Street, a 4-lane straight shot west to Swan Island. I am driving smoothly. My father is relaxed. Strangely, there is a pile of large Douglas fir logs across the road ahead of us. My father says, "Do you see the logs?" I say, "Yes." He nods and looks out the side window. I approach the logs and hit the gas hard. The car sails through the air, clears the logs, and lands with a thundering sound. I think, great, I cleared them. Then I see my father's face. His eyes are wide open. His mouth is open. He is struggling to speak. There's a moment of silence. And then he begins screaming at me. Finally, he gets out of the car and looks under it. He tells me to move over, gets into the driver's side, and is surprised the car starts. We drive home in explosive silence. We are home. My father begins yelling wildly at me and tells my mother what I did. My mother says, "Well, nothing bad happened. Anybody can make a little mistake." My father goes ballistic. He says my mother is crazier than I am. At that moment, George Nikoloff drops by. He is my father's best friend and visits often. George asks my father what is going on, and my father tells him. George turns to me and says, "Rodka, did you do that?" I say, "Yes." George looks at me with wonder and says, "By God, Duchamp, this is some girl! By God, I never heard anything so wonderful!" After he leaves, my father says George must be nuts, and he turns to me and says, "You are never driving again. I am selling your car, that's it." George has a tavern, and unknown to us, he tells my driving story to his patrons, some of whom are Macedonian friends. 2 weeks later, the monthly Saturday evening business meeting is held at our Macedonian club, Podkripa. We arrive as usual, but as we enter, all eyes turn to us. A group of the men, led by Sam Duman, come over and they address me. Unheard of. Duman says that they heard I jumped a logging pile with my car. Is it true? I'm not, yes. And they immediately turn to my father and ask him to tell the wondrous story. The women nearby smile at me with pride. After the business meeting, as we all sit at the long tables having bread, feta cheese, olives, wine, beer, and soft drinks, different groups ask my father to tell the story again and again. They all say it was a wonderful deed, that I am special. The story delights them. They say that since the car wasn't damaged, it is a sign I am favored by the gods. And because my father was part of it, he is favored by the gods. I can still see their smiles and their awe. The remembering always lifts me up and makes me happy. The next day is Sunday. My father says, "Let's go for a drive."
I'll let the cat out of the bag. That is a true story. There's no fiction in that. I've been to Podkripa. I've talked to those people. They all tell the same story my mom told. So let's hear it from my mom and for Sarah. Okay, now we're on to the real presentations. And I have to say that choosing presentation pieces for an event like this is really tough because every single piece in the book deserves to be presented in its entirety. We don't have time for that. So we select pieces from the entire collection. You'll hear some, but not all, of our award winners tonight. Our program is designed to give you a taste of what's in the book because, let's face it, we want you to buy the book. Some of the presentations are excerpts from longer pieces, and you will want to read those pieces in full. I do have to say that misspellings and errors in both the book and the program are all on me. And there are some in there. I'll try to point some of them out as we go. But we will start the official 2018 presentations now with a special presentation of last year's Award of Merit winner. And we'll end tonight's presentation with Celeste's Award of Merit winning poem. Thus, bookending our evening with two Best of Book inspiring pieces. So first up, we have our 2017 Award of Merit guest presenter, Sam Watermeyer, with his memoir, Films About Ghosts. Woo! Sam! And since you have your own printout, I'm just going to turn it in. And I will leave this is the photograph that Sam submitted with the story. So at intermission, you will want to take a look at it. So it's all yours, Sam.
The story is by my dad, and he's in that black and white photo down there. He's the badass-looking guy on the left. And the title of the story is actually a lyric from a Counting Crows song. The lyric is, "If dreams are like movies, then memories are films about ghosts."
Can you see it? Is there a glare?
Skin flakes fell, blood baked on the hot asphalt. The salty, metallic stench of sweat wafted in the summer air as the zombies shambled, chasing the frazzled sheriff down the street a bit jammed with abandoned cars. Another episode of The Walking Dead. Standard viewing for me and my dad on Sunday nights. We indulged in the morbid series religiously, as if we needed another reminder of mortality. In front of our TV, medical monitor cords spread across the carpet, like vines on a forest floor. The monitor's beeping competed with the volume of the zombie action on screen. I reached for the remote resting next to the pill bottles on Dad's TV tray. He was sitting on the edge of his home hospital bed in this sick bay that had been our living room before he was diagnosed with cancer. Dad watched giddily as the sheriff fled into the forest away from the zombie. He bounced up with delight on the squeaky bed when the end credits rolled. "Man, that was a good one. Cathartic," he said. "How so?" I asked. "It's nice to see someone get away in a bad situation. That doesn't happen very often in horror," Dad said. A sly grin lifted the bags under his eyes. I reveled for a moment in the warmth and relief of his smile. It was always soothing to see him without pain. Now felt like as good a time as any to invite Dad to the fall horror convention I was eagerly awaiting. Days of the Dead in nearby Noblesville, Indiana. It's the kind of unassuming little place with a quiet town square that a horror director would love to flood with zombies. "I was actually reading about that in the paper," Dad said. "There's a film showing there that I want you to see." "Cool, what movie?" "You'll see," he said. Another mischievous smile made my 58-year-old father seem like a little boy. Movies energized my dad the same way they invigorate me. His eyes lit up when the chance of going to the theater came around, even more so after he was diagnosed with cancer. He wasn't completely confined to his bed, but he certainly needed rest, and the depression from his sickness and inability to work undoubtedly played a part in grounding him in that room. But movie-going was something he always looked forward to, and an escape he definitely needed at this time. Fortunately, during this difficult period, my work involved reviewing movies for the local weekly newspaper, Nuvo, which the editors told me meant new voice. Dad would offer to help me find that voice when I sat on his hospital bed after work, with my computer and a small stack of film screeners in my lap. I was curious about the film he wanted me to see that weekend. He never steered me wrong when it came to movie recommendations. As we left the house for the horror convention, my mother lovingly shook her head, bemused by her two boys' thirst for thrills and chills. On the way to the convention center hotel, Dad's pale face grew flushed with joy as he shared his love of horror films. "I'll never forget seeing The Exorcist with your mom. I stayed up that whole night talking about it. Not because I was scared, of course," he said, his dry lips cracking into a wry smile. "I was just struck by how it mirrored the mood of the time. It really captured the loss of innocence, the vulnerability of youth. I know it sounds silly, but if you think about it, the little girl possessed by the demon in that movie wasn't terribly different from the kids sent to Vietnam. She was helpless like them. Dark forces were just thrust upon her. This connection between the film's otherworldly story and real-world issues enchanted me like magic. Dad added a dimension to the character, brought her into his world, and made this horror icon a vulnerable Vietnam-era youth like him. She wasn't a mere invention anymore, but a funhouse mirror of reality. It's therapeutic when you deal with your fears through fantasy, Dad said. Like Mary Poppins said, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, he said with a bashful chuckle. Horror movies kind of exorcise the fears that are hurting us. I wished the priest and the exorcist would come drive out the fear and sickness that was hurting my dad. That kind of collision between reality and fantasy soon appeared before our eyes. As Dad and I pulled up to the hotel, we saw a line of creatures down the block. Zombies, vampires, werewolves, razor-fingered dream stalkers, you name it. All of them out to celebrate the cathartic power of horror. When I took my eyes off the crowd, I saw Dad smiling from ear to ear. I wished he always felt this good, this comfortable. Walking up to the hotel felt like being in a horror movie, with the soft purple light of dusk behind us and the small town bustling with grisly creatures. We waded through the grim sea, our noses tingled by the smell of fur, rubber, and corn syrup, which stained several attendees' gory get-ups. Dad led us through the hotel lobby, walking quickly in front of me, which felt a bit strange. I was growing used to him getting winded and falling behind when we would go anywhere, often removing the breathing tube from his nose out of discomfort and embarrassment. A few people seemed to recognize him as we walked by, darting that "where do I know you from?" look that is so common at horror conventions. Here it is, I can't wait for you to see this. Dad's voice squeaked with an edge of adolescent exuberance. We stopped at a screening room just as a panel discussion with the cast was ending. We took our seats as the audience applauded, and soon the lights went down, the film began, and ominous 80s synth pop pulsated through the room. The film? I Was a Zombie for the FBI. The opening credit sequence alone made Dad seem right at home, reminding him of a more innocent era of horror films. You could sense the actors having fun, like mischievous big brothers, their tongues poking through their cheeks. Dad giggled like he would at children on Halloween, sitting back more comfortably in his seat than he did in his rickety hospital bed. The film washed over him like a warm blanket. I Was a Zombie for the FBI tells of a quiet little town, much like the one we were visiting. It's invaded by aliens who recruit two thieves to help them steal and poison the local soda supply in order to zombify the population of Pleasantville. As I watched the little black and white B-movie crinkle and crack on the screen, I found myself regretting how often I took movie-going with Dad for granted. I thought about the warmth of his burly arms, which were reduced to sticks by chemo, and his love of cinema radiating through my seat. I thought about the way he nudged me with surprise snacks during the slow parts of the movie, and the way we would often go to a coffee shop afterwards and almost knock our cups over while excitedly talking about films. My brain suddenly snapped back into the zombie flick, and I jumped up in my chair to find my daydream colliding with the dream world on screen. My dad was suddenly in the movie. 30 years younger and dressed in old-fashioned detective garb, he was one of the titular FBI agents, speaking urgently about the alien threat. His dialogue seeped through my ears like a zombie's moans. I couldn't make out a word of it in my mystified state. Did the poisoned zombie soda leak out of the screen and into my brain? Was I dreaming? When I turned to Dad, he was already looking at me, smiling. "Pinch me, Dad, this is crazy," I whispered. "It's freaking me out. That guy looks just like you." "It is me," he said, barely containing his signature sly grin. "Why didn't you tell me you were in a horror movie?" I asked, almost yelling. I wanted to surprise you at the right time. He never failed to surprise me. Even when he was shrunken by sickness, my dad seemed larger than life, especially up on the big screen. He will always be that way, immortalized in celluloid, and in places I cannot see.
See.
Treat for us to have Sam here tonight is that it is his mother's birthday, and she's here tonight too. So happy birthday! All right. Next up, we have Spooky Town, a song by Gene Roberts.
Can I have can I sit on the
You can have whatever you want. Yep. And you can arrange your spikes or mics as however you need. I've been asked to ask people to squish in as much as possible so that people who are standing up can sit down. So if you have any space next to you, switch over, raise your hand, invite people to come sit. It's a full house. So.
Right.
We have a singleton chair here.
We have the bench.
One there.
We have the bench. Purses off.
That's true. Anyone else in there?
You want to go right on the
Alice, there's a chair right here for somebody.
that chair to the side. Hope I don't hit anybody.
This is a song that was written in connection with a workshop. Can you make this go back this way a little bit?
Yeah.
And just so I can bring it down here. With a songwriting workshop that they had here. Is that too close? Yeah, that's fine. And I was kind of surprised when it got accepted because I hadn't written the music yet. So
How did we know that? Right.
there's something I want the audience to help me with on this. One of the elements of this song is supposed to be an audience participation part. When we get to the part where the ghosts are making noises, I'm going to sing ooh, ooh, ee, ee, ah, ah. You can sing along with me, but what I really want to have here is what you think ghosts would sound like. You know, some people will go ooh, or something like that. Whatever you think it sounds like. Make those noises for me during that part. I think it would sound really cool if we have a whole host of ghosts singing. In the cool green water around the covered bridge, goblins talking to the shore. He said, "What's that under your skin?" she asks. He says, I'll take a stroll. Talk to the mirror about the spot, what is good and what is not. Spooky city, spooky town. I
mic because I'm a short little person. Okay, I know next up we have, I know what's going on, but I'd like to have my book. Next up we have Casey Kenley with Crawl Space Beer. And I'm basically forcing Casey to read the whole thing. It's not very long. So, now, why are the ghosts still here? Arrange it. Okay.
So I wrote this.
Right on the mic.
Okay. So I wrote this piece during a memoir workshop with Gail Geisler back there and some other people. But it was super fun, so I wrote this in about 45 minutes. That's my. So Crawl Space Beer. So the 6 of us girls were packed into the car, sweat fogging the windshield. I was driving. The Violent Femmes blared Blister in the Sun on the tape player over our shrieks. Cans of Milwaukee's Best popping open, sloshing around in the back seat. It was a perfect summer high school night. Off the highway, down the road a bit, and past the fence line, we turned into the driveway. The quarter-mile dip and climb to my house in the country. But the porch light was on. I hadn't left it on. I shoved on the brakes, and the girls went silent. Someone hit the off button, and the music died. They know, I said. They must know. Our headlights would be the only light for half a mile, and it was only 8 o'clock. They weren't in bed yet, but they were supposed to be 100 miles away on a date in the U.S. They never left me all by myself for a night, so I'd invited the girls over for a sleepover and lots of beer. We bought it after school that afternoon. Tracy's fake ID always worked at that quick stop on Highland Avenue. I hauled it all home and brought it inside after Mom and Dad had left for the night. The beer we intended to consume filled the fridge. And when the fridge was full, I had stashed it in cabinets, in cast iron skillets and saucepans. I even put a few six-packs in the crawl space under the house. The jig was up. That was pretty obvious. We were 16 and scared, but at least we had our story straight. We weren't going to leave the house. We were going to be safe and drink at home. It was stupid. No, we don't do this often. We're so sorry. It will never happen again. I parked the car and we all slid out. The girls followed me inside with their sleeping bags, quiet as cats when cats want to be invisible. Casey? She called from upstairs. Hey, Mom, I thought y'all were spending the night, I called back. Her footfalls down the stairs didn't sound like they carried the weight of an angry mom. She flipped on the kitchen light. Well, we just decided to call it an early night, she said, blinking under the lights and looking past me. What are you girls doing? She appeared curious, not accusing, as my 5 friends stood behind me, gripping their sleeping bags. Maybe the tighter they squeezed, the less severe the punishment would feel. I strayed from our story, hoping my instinct was right. We didn't really have any plans, so I said we could come back here. My voice shook. Mom tilted her head, blinked once, and watch a movie or something. Just spend the night. Well, have fun. Don't be too loud. Dad and I called it an early night. We're going to bed, Mom said, and went upstairs. They hadn't opened a cabinet. They hadn't opened the fridge. They had no idea the level of loudness and drunkenness we planned to reach on cheap light beer. A few weeks later, a safe distance from our brush with a permanent grounding from sleepovers, Mom was banging silverware. She claimed a cookie sheet into a cabinet. You okay, Mom? It's Josh. Dad was doing some work under the house and found beer. She was pissed. My heart leapt. That night, after we had stealthily pulled all the beer out of the kitchen and put it back in the trunk of my car, I had forgotten about the crawl space. Oh, I said. That's all I said. Until years later. My brother, Josh, always got in trouble. Or at least he always got caught. I was the middle child, 2 years younger than him, 5 years older than our sister Allie. I followed along with my brother as our parents moved us from public to private and then back to private schools as my parents tried to find the right school for Josh. I got good grades, covered my tracks, and looked, at least from the outside, to be a pleaser. Josh got bad grades, a DUI, and could be moody. I was hard to live with. Years later, when I told Josh that I'd been the one who forgot to get the beer out of the crawl space, he didn't even remember the incident, and he didn't care. Did it matter that I didn't own up to it? Probably not. But I remember it because, while most of the grief my brother brought on himself was due to his own behavior, this one I caused, and it wasn't his fault. Today, Josh and I have a good relationship. We call each other at least once a month. When I bring my kids to visit my parents' house, he hand ties lures and fishes with my boys. I think he forgives me for being the good kid. We both still live here.
Next up, we have a poem by Rachel Cox called Listen. So you guys have to listen. Miss Rachel, it's all good.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? A little bit taller than Alex. You are. Let's just do that. First of all, this is my second time attending this shindig. First time submitting. And so I'd like to thank Alice and Sarah and Bill and Kurt for starting this thing and running it, and all the volunteers that kind of run this little oasis of creativity. It's just so important that we have this, and it's so amazing that we do. Listen. Listen for the whisper, for the creak, for the sigh, the small exhale of breath awaiting the presence of another. You are not alone as you wish to be, as you hate to be, yearning for the freedom of only you, dreading only yourself.
Next up, we have an excerpt from Perchin on Lake Michigan 2017 by Al Giesler.
So when I heard the theme for this year was factor fishing, I figured I'd have
All those typos.
So I was reading the Noblesville Times last night, and Brent Wheat started a story out that there's three types of liars. There's liars, there's damn liars, and there's fishermen. And in this case, I want to just tell you, I'm not going to ruin the story for you, but I will tell you, it's an unbelievable true story. My brother Dave and I were out fishing on Lake Michigan one evening in September, just this past year. We caught our limit of perch in 50 foot of water about 5 miles south of the South Haven pierheads. After sunset, it was time to head in and try our luck at something bigger. Dave started up the engine on the Lund and hit the gas for shore. Our Lund is an 18-foot fisherman with a 165 horsepower Chevy V6 inboard. It's set up with gear for trolling the big lake, big John rod trees for running planers, track-mounted rod holders for running dipsies, 3 downriggers capable of running 9 down rods when including sliders. There's a bow-mounted Minn Kota wireless trolling motor and a 15 horsepower Mercury Bigfoot kicker to hold the Lund on speed and course. We use a Fishhawk X4 sensor to locate the thermocline, monitor water temps, and find the correct speed and direction relative to the variable bottom currents of the big lake. The salmon run was just getting started, and we had the ugly sticks and power rods all rigged and ready for the big one. My favorite 12-foot rod was set with 20-pound mono on an old Cardinal 6 reel that my fishing buddy Ray Motlick gave me. It might have been the luck on that reel that always produced a big fish each time out on the water. As we approached the pier heads about a half-mile away, Dave cut back on the gas. It was fully dark, and the lights from the South Pier and South Haven shoreline twinkled with beauty. The police were searching the South Beach. You could see a four-wheeler driving along the water's edge with spotlights, searching the dune grass for something or someone. What do you think the cops are looking for, Dave? Don't know, but something's up for them to be all the way down by the blue stairs. We watched as the spotlight panned back and forth, up and down the bluff. Feeling a bit careless about their search, it's not an issue for us. We were over a mile offshore. Nothing out here to bother us. I decided to cast my rod baited with a blue and silver local that I had recovered from a snag while fishing the Manistee River the week prior. It's an old proven lure that was hot bait back in the 70s when the king salmon ran heavy up the Black River. Just after setting the rod in the holder, a fish hit the local, and the power rod was bent over. The line was ripping off the spool as the fish made a first run. About 50 yards of line stripped off, and Dave said, "You better tighten the drag and get that fish to turn. Get him turned with the boat." I knew I had plenty of line to fight out this fish, however, Dave was correct, so I tightened the drag. Before I was able to turn the fish, it jumped and broke water with a big splash on the surface. You could tell it was a huge monster. It took off and ripped more line from the reel. The fish then went deep for the bottom and finally turned with the boat. I started to gain line and slowly brought the fish in closer to the boat. It stayed down close to the bottom and was almost directly under the boat. Dave yelled, "Don't let it cut the line in the motor." Just then the fish raced up from the bottom of the lake. It made a fast run directly up under the boat. That fish was trying to slackline me and drop the hook. I cranked as fast as I could on that old Cardinal, but I was unable to keep the line tight. The line went slack and apparently the fish shook the hook. Another big one that got away. Or did it? I started to hear a voice. Do you hear that? What is it? Dave, did you turn on the radio? Or is that your phone? Dave responded confused. I don't know. He stood up from the driver's seat to take a look. Dave announced in amazement, "There's something hanging on the front of our boat."
Okay, next up we have a collection of poems by Sandra Stewart titled Of Mice and Men. I know, fingerprints key.
We'll begin with the men portion of the collection. The first one is about one of those quaint courtship rituals of my youth. It's called hangover. I woke up this morning with a stranger in my bed. I should have known it would happen. He was there when I went to sleep. There's a theme running through this collection. They were all written at that time in my life when I was beginning to notice the connection between cause and effect. That the choices I made and the actions I took were shaping the life that I lived. So each one of these is special to me because it marks a time when I began to make the right decisions. The second one is called Boat Shoe, about a beautiful young man. Bright shadow dancing out of reach, touch down for a moment, I will caress you. Chinked armor, sheltering tender soul, fall open once more, I will invade you. Snake doctor, maybe lover, there's fear in your electric eyes. What can I do about it? I only learned to breathe last Sunday. A reminder. You don't need him to tell you you can't. He doesn't need you to tell him you shouldn't. You don't need each other not to give love to. It's long past time to grow up lonely children and dance on your own 4 feet. Now for the mice portion. This may require a little setup. I lived in downtown Boston at the time, and the building next to me was torn down. Now, when a city building is torn down, hundreds of thousands of mice are homeless. So they began to visit me in my apartment. And because I like mice, I was really enjoying them. My dog and I used to sit on the sofa and walk across the living room. I noticed that they particularly liked dog bones, and I found the hole in my kitchen wall where they were coming in. So I would take a little dog bone and hold it up to the hole and say, "Here, Miss Mousie, Miss Mousie, Miss Mousie." And 2 tiny little hands would come through the hole and take the dog bone. What could possibly go wrong with a plan like that? This one is called Hymn of Repentance. I invited you in, Miss Mousie. You were delighted to be so known. You brought all your friends, Miss Mousie. I killed them one by one. What beautiful trust you showed me. That beautiful trust I betrayed. My ignorance at times is unbounded. Forgive me for being afraid. You danced your joy around me. I saw only vermin and pests. I baited my trap for the slaughter and closed my eyes to the rest. I beat the wounded to death with a hammer, but finally I did it with love. You understood then, Miss Mousie, and left, leaving only your blood. In my defense, my cracking point was when they began running up and down the bed curtains of my loft bed while I was sleeping. I am proud to say that I have never killed another mouse. I don't need to. I have a husband and a cat.
We have one of our founding fathers, Bill Kenley, reading an excerpt, The Cold Boy.
I really want to thank Alice and Sarah for the work they do. I tell my students, and I've got a few here, and I've got a few former students. One of the great things about teaching creative writing is you get to see into people's minds a little bit. The world high school for sure can feel like you walk down that hallway, everybody it just seems like a dead zone sometimes mentally. You walk by these people, but when you read their poems and you read their stories, you just know better. You understand that every person really is unique. They've got their own story and they're rich. I found this quote. I was reading a book about Midwestern literature today, and this epigram from Ralph Waldo Emerson struck me as being poignant, especially for this evening. It says, "Man is surprised to find things near are not less beautiful and wondrous than things remote," which I think is very appropriate for the Poetry Review and a good reminder to all of us that that we've got rich lives around us. Anyway, The Cold Boy. Because it was so hot that week, rather than hang around the campfire site during the middle of the day, reading assigned summer reading we put off or playing cards, we all, along with everyone else in the park, headed to the beach. Although to call it a beach would be an overstatement. It was a strip of dark brown sand that must have been trucked in, as the bottom of the lake was made up of powdery silt, no sand anywhere. The swimming area was a roped-off square of tepid, brownish-green water that tasted like stone, and when hundreds of swimmers were in there, was cloudy with churned-up silt, impossible to see through. The swimming area was cordoned off by a scratchy hemp rope with floating buoys every 10 feet or so. On the beach, a bored teenage lifeguard in a floppy tan hat and sunglasses sat under a sun-faded red umbrella on top of a rickety white lifeguard chair. It seemed, at best, a required nod to safety. The main attraction at the beach was a tall, spiraling slide at the back of the cordoned-off water. That afternoon, the little spot of lakefront was like a water hole in a Saharan drought. You've seen the nature shows. Yawning hippos, hoary wildebeest, crocodiles up to their elbows in muck, skittishly yapping hyenas and nervous gazelles, all together, no choice in the matter. On a hot day, the need for water trumps all, and it felt like about 1,000 of us were crammed into the warm brown water, shoulder to shoulder, getting some relief from the chronic blast of the summer sun. I believe it was because there were so many of us swimming that day that nobody noticed the boy was missing until it was too late. Thank you.
I will have to give Bill an extra special thank you tonight because later on in the evening after intermission, he's going to be reading an excerpt from my son's submission. My son's in grad school, so he couldn't be here tonight. But he actually was in Bill's creative writing class in Noblesville High School, so it's very appropriate that Bill's going to read that for him. So thank you, Bill. Next up, moving right along, we have a story by Jerry Dreesen called Blood Brothers, and we have invited Kelly Ray Yates to read that for us tonight. You know what to do with the microphone. Oh, yeah, I think I can figure that out. Thank you for doing this. Mm-hmm.
Double check. In the valley, autumn had begun its cycle of dying. The winding path leading to the cabin ahead was strewn with early leaves, yellow ash silvered with rain that misted midair all afternoon. The cabin was small and worn, gray as sorrow. A thin string of smoke from the chimney rose and then disappeared as though never there. "Anybody home?" I called, knocking on the door. The door opened slightly. "What do you want?" "Looking for John Foster. You him?" "Might be, might not. Who are you? Tell me quick, can't keep this door open forever." "I'm from the sheriff's office. Do you know Billy Hastings?" The door gave way to a wider opening. A tall man with large hands filled the door frame. "I know him. I know Billy. Knowed him all my life. Best friends, me and Billy." He stepped back and motioned for me to come inside. The cabin was warm, filled with the amber glow from 2 kerosene lamps, one on the table in the middle of the room, the other next to an old bentwood rocker. The floor was covered partly by a braided rug, worn smooth from years of being there. Neither of us spoke for a time, mesmerized perhaps by the fire, the slow heartbeat of the grandfather clock. "I've known Billy my whole life," the man repeated, "since we were kids, growed up together, getting into all kinds of scrapes and fights. When we were 12, well, he was 12, I was close to being, we took a blood oath, pricked our thumbs and held them together, his and mine, so our bleeding would touch, and we'd be blood brothers for all time and circumstance. We always tell each other everything, you know, the good and the not so. Things said that make each other laugh, or words that suffer serious thinking. We're like that, you know, brothers." He looked at his hands, weathered and veined, like the ash leaves lying on the graveled path. "Why are you here, Sheriff? Why are you looking for Billy?" "Well, not really looking," I said. "I've come with sorry news, John. Billy's dead. The Tolbert boys found him hanging from a tree in the ravine, note pinned to his breast pocket. He had written your name, gave instructions to come tell you." Big John Foster sat in front of the fire for a long time, leaning toward it, staring at his hands, running his finger across his thumb. "You see? Damn fool. That's just like Billy. Of course he wants me to know. He's my best friend, old Billy. Always tells me everything."
Oh, I get to read the next one because, unfortunately, Crystal Morrison has the flu. So I'm going to read an excerpt from her fabulous story called The Sound of Echoes. I'm going to try to use this one so I can actually see my paper. Atlanta Center, this is N344A requesting assistance. The hair on the back of Steve's neck stood on end as the panicked voice reverberated through his headset. He quickly replied to the caller as he searched his Atlanta Center control terminal for an unidentified blip. Go ahead, N344A. Save request. N344A requesting flight following. I've gotten off course and feel a little disoriented. I'm a VFR pilot and the conditions up here are deteriorating fast, replied the rattled voice. Not a problem, N344A. Try to maintain visual flight conditions and squawk 3256, Steve calmly instructed from the dark radar room. Roger, said the voice with an audible sense of relief. I'm turning my transponder to 3256 and am at altitude of 6,500 feet. Sorry. Within seconds, Steve saw the now identified blip and responded, N344A, I have you on my radar. Looks like you are 22 miles east of the Athens, Georgia airport. Say destination, type of aircraft, and equipment, please. There was a long, eerie silence before the pilot responded. My final destination? I just want to see my family. Steve didn't expect this kind of answer, but stress can make people respond in odd ways. So taking his training into account, he cautiously replied, Understood, N344A. What is your flight destination for today? Which airport are you meeting your family? Seeming more agitated and distracted, the pilot replied, I departed Daniel Field in Augusta, Georgia in my Cessna 172 for Blairsville, Georgia Airport. The identifier is Kilo Delta Zulu Juliet. Annotating this new information, Steve directed, Roger that, N344A. Let's fly heading of 315 degrees and maintain 65,000 feet. Based on your radar position, that should get you going in the direction of your destination. Do you have a GPS on board? There was another odd silence, and then the once panicked pilot almost seemed to be smirking or smiling as he dryly replied, Yes, turning to a heading of 315 degrees, and I'm still searching for my destination. In today's modern age, a pilot heading out any decent distance from his hometown airport without a GPS was ludicrous. Steve shook his head in frustration as he contemplated the older-sounding gentleman flying around in a small aircraft with minimal instrumentation and deteriorating weather conditions. He tried to shake the prickling sensation running down his spine. I was writing about flight stuff, so if I screwed up any of those words, I'm really sorry, Crystal. Next up, we have the fabulous Sarah E. Maren with an excerpt from Candy Crush. Not Candy Crushes, which is what your program says, because I'm an idiot. Okay?
She'd give him a box of conversation hearts. They were perfect, a pink box of hard candies. They looked like pastel chalk compressed into heart shapes. On each was written an eloquent message proclaiming such profound sentiments as, cool, hi baby, XO, XO. Oh, they were the 5th grade version of a Shakespearean sonnet, written in colored sugar. It was the day, Valentine's Day. She called Lizzie before school to ask to borrow her red IU hoodie. But you're a Purdue fan, said Lizzie. We're supposed to wear red for the class party. She slipped Lizzie's hoodie on before class. The kangaroo pouch in front was perfect, just the right size for a box of conversation hearts. They rattled when she shot hoops at recess. Then the fateful hour arrived. The 5th grade switched classrooms for math, which meant shrugging across the hall to Mrs. Dickinson's classroom, which was also Scott Adams' homeroom, where Mindy sat in Scott Adams' desk every day for 40 blissful minutes, full of the tantalizing notion that his butt cheeks had been the ones to warm the plastic seat for her. It had to be fate that assigned her to Scott Adams' desk. Then again, fate must be cruel, because it had also seated Leighton to her right. He kept smirking at her, so she turned her back to him and toward Chrissy, the class tattletale, on her other side. Chrissy stuck her prissy hand in the air. Miss Dickinson! Mindy's trying to cheat off my quiz. Mrs. Dickinson ordered Mindy to swivel back around. Mindy scribbled a few random answers on her quiz, sidled her eyes right and left. She slid her hands into the kangaroo pouch of the IU sweatshirt. Her damp palms closed around the thin cardboard box. The clock ticked overhead like a bomb timer. She lifted the desk lid millimeter by millimeter. Creak went the hinges. It seemed to echo like that time her family hollered into the Grand Canyon. But the only one who seemed to have noticed was Leighton. She stared at her hand. He stared at her hand, eyes wide. What? Didn't he think she had the guts to go deliver a stupid Valentine? She'd show him. She shoved the box into Scott's desk. The candy rattled on impact. Miss Dixon! Chrissy waved her hand in the air again, her butt halfway off her seat. Mindy's stealing something out of that desk. Mindy snatched her hand back. The lid banged closed. She couldn't lift her head, but she could feel the gazes on her like headlights. Clack, 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 went Mrs. Dickinson's hard-heeled shoes on the tiles. They parked right in front of Mindy, all shiny and black like cop cars.
Next up, we have a song, Bluegrass Heaven, performed by Steve Vandewater, original songwriter that he is. Steve, come on up. I don't know what you need of all this, so.
I'm not really familiar.
Do you need it?
Over here, sorry.
Okay.
All right. When Alice asked me to perform one of the songs I'd submitted tonight, I told her that I hadn't submitted any songs.
Could have fooled me.
Well, they're poems because I don't sing. I don't have a good voice, and can't really play that well. And so doing both of them at the same time in public is a really outside my comfort level. But since the poem that I wrote was kind of about not being a good musician, but wishing I was, I thought, well, what the heck, I got nothing to lose, I have a captive audience, and I apologize in advance to any music lovers out there. This is, it was kind of inspired by an old Mark Twain short story called Captain Stormfield's Visit to Heaven, and this song is called Bluegrass Heaven, and I hope you enjoy it. I love that music, though I have no skill to play, but that's all bound to change, I know, come the judgment day. I'm doomed to be a lousy picker on this blessed earth, but up in heaven I will play for all my soul is worth. 'Cause heaven is the place, they say, where all your dreams come true. I bet the roads are paved with gravel and the grass is blue. There's banjo music playing all around the heavenly square, and angels' toes are tapping because they haven't got a care. So when I get to heaven, if St. Peter lets me in, I sure don't want no golden harp, I'll play a mandolin. And when I get my halo and my silky wings unfurl, I'll fly to join the angel band and pick with Doc and Merle. For heaven is the place, they say, you always get your wish, where creeks all flow with whiskey and there's stools of tasty fish, where no one's ever hungry nor ever has to toil, digging in the cold dark mines or working rocky soil. And heaven is the place, they say, where I'll be satisfied. But what about my neighbors there who don't like like bluegrass well. They sure won't be in paradise, they'll think they've gone to hell. But heaven is a land where everyone gets what they want. If I'm unwelcome there, I guess I'll find a different haunt. I want to be most anywhere that fiddle music rings. No matter if it's hot or cold, I want to hear some strings. So if I prove unworthy and I end up down below, I'll sit there by old Splitfoot as he rosens up his bow. We'll play there in the brimstone, flames dancing all around, by that fiddling devil's campfire, barely 6 feet underground.
Next, we have Sally Meyer with Indiana's Lyrical Underdog.
My boyfriend Mitch was supposed to be here tonight, but he's performing in Madison, Wisconsin, and I'd imagine he's probably pretty excited that he's going to follow that one up.
I have to say, again, in the program, it says Sally Meyer and Kid Quill, and well, Kid Quill is here out of my stand.
Mitch pulled his DePaul soccer hat over his head as a light November drizzle started to come down. We were waiting outside the Uptown Cafe, vying with the churchgoers for the next available table to open up, as two hungover millennials typically do on a Sunday morning. We talk cynically about mega churches, and he brings up some charity work he did with his grandma at her church that week. I'm lucky I didn't catch on fire when I stepped inside, he jokes. When we're finally seated, he catches sight of a man across the room who's indulging in a heaping plate of something worth envy. I have to go ask him what he ordered, Mitch says, before he makes his way over to the gentleman and taps him on the shoulder. There was one main thought that was going through my mind as I listened over the buzz of the crowded diner. Excuse me, sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but your meal looks so good, I was wondering what you ordered, I hear him say. The guy answers casually, and Mitch returns to our table, seeming pleased with life as usual, his signature dimple pressed into his cheek. I couldn't help but feel a sense of irony, because the guy who he approached has no idea who Mitch is, and actually most people don't. Though Mitch was born and raised in Indiana, no one in the jam-packed diner recognized him as the 23-year-old recording artist that he was. When I try to decide what angle to come at this from, I realized that most people reading this would be hearing the name Kid Quill for the first time. And when you learn that a guy from Shelbyville, Indiana has had not one, but 2 albums achieve top 10 status on the iTunes hip-hop rap charts, most readers would probably have the same reaction as I did, and that's disbelief. Much of the music that skyrocketed his last 2 albums to such a status were written in between classes at DePaul and recorded at a private studio here in Noblesville. The first show I ever saw of his, I was just there by happenstance. His buddy Nick had arranged for him to play at a fraternity in Terre Haute. That night in September, Nick passed me in one of the hallways, and he was full of energy. Dude, his album just reached top 10 on iTunes today, Nick informed me. I was immediately skeptical. If this guy were all that good, I would have already heard about him, but I was so wrong. Fast forward, and that rainy day in November had been replaced by a snowy December one. Mitch and I's stomachs were grumbling, but our bank accounts weren't exactly full either, so we forego brunch. It's another Sunday morning, this time off a side street in Broad Ripple. We were sitting in the car for longer than people usually do because this type of company is hard to come by, and today goodbyes are postponable. He plays me a new song he's working on called Weatherman, and amid the chills it gives me, I fail to immediately recognize the irony of the title as the snow falls down. With Mitch, you forget you're talking to a rapper, and the inside of him, it's a political science minor and an interpersonal communications major. Starts to show out more. He's a comforting, endless conversation type of person. But eventually silence falls and he sort of becomes someone else for a minute. Do you think you'll always live in Indy? He asks me, staring out the window as the first snowfall of the season starts to stick. You can see it in his face that winter weighs more heavily on him than it does on most. I tell him I'm not sure yet, but I think I want to come back here and have kids someday. Maybe like how sea turtles like to return to where they're born. He laughs and that dimple appears again in his cheek before he makes his point. I really want to be the guy from Indy, he says. He references several artists and the places they're from, explaining that there's really no one from Indy yet, and he wonders why it shouldn't be him after all. I can't help but agree. He loves this place so much. What a sincere soul he's got. I really wondered how many more seasons he would spend as the unknown underdog walking among us. Thank you.
Next, we have Mike Stewart with a song, I Don't Think We Will. Mike, you want to answer?
Yes, I do.
What else can I get for you?
A couple of beers.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, this song basically is about two young Noblesville punks behaving badly. And, basis for this was no. This happened many, many years ago. Oh, I was going to plug it in. Hold on.
Okay. Oh, that's John's job. This is,
Do you have a chord set out for me, John? But I was a young hippie at the time. I was drafted into the Army and had orders for Vietnam. I had 30 days leave to get my affairs in order. And ran into this high school friend of mine. And we decided a road trip might be just what we needed. So this is the song about the road trip. Well, back before I went to war, or really anywhere, I took my first trip to the west to see what's happening with my friend Dan, who had himself a Plymouth muscle car. We were two young fools flying low, not caring where we are, screaming out Route 66 when that could still be done. Pair of hickish hellions helping on having fun. Dan was drinking PBR and I was smoking hash. We sold our childhood homestead, so I had a little cash. Heading for Las Vegas, checking all points in between. Awestruck by the scenery, stuff we'd only seen on TV and movies or in a magazine. Each new point's more thrilling than the places we'd just been. All the states through other states, no regard for the law. Taking over ownership of everything we saw. Racing headlong into places trouble always dwells. A danger to the general public, danger to ourselves. Not thinking about the consequences, just two stupid kids. You'd think we thought about that. I don't think we did. While driving through the desert, we came upon a storm. Bright sunshine on either side, the middle filled with harm. Thunder, lightning, sheets of rain, wind blowing us around. When lightning struck beside us, Lord, I swear we left the ground. You could feel the thunder crashing, we were pelted by the hail. Two new lost explorers in the middle of a gale.
And then all of a sudden we were on the other side. The sun was shining bright again, the road had nearly dried. Soaked up by the desert, it was soaked up by my brain. Just the fury of that storm where I thought it never rained. Did that really happen, Dan, or am I just too high? Dan said for a minute there, I thought we was gonna die. Emboldened by the spectacle, we had just survived. We thought we were invincible, so anything could try to turn around and go back through it from the other side. Chase the rush of another turn on nature's carny ride, but this time with the top down and I'll sit out on it. Dan said, yeah, it sounds like fun, but I don't think we should. In Winslow, Arizona, we met up with Sheriff Sam, driving just a little quick. Sam saw Dan lift his can. His bubble light was flashing as he pulled us through the side. I tried to think of all the things I'd better hide. But I was focused on that storm, couldn't get it off my mind. So there's just no telling what Sheriff Sam might find. Then Dan got out and in Sam's face and started raising hell. They claiming we were innocent, but I think we're going to jail. Then Sam tapped on my window and asked me to roll it down. Asked me what I thought I was doing here in Winslow town. I mumbled incoherently, words I could not form. I was looking up at Sam, but I was thinking about that storm. Sam said, son, I think you are worse than the other guy. Go drink some coffee, sober up, and I might let you by. So we walked into the Golden Bear, got a cup to go, and sit out on the corner, watch the traffic flow. Waving to the pretty girls, but none of them slowed down. We weren't quite as lucky as that handsome Jackson Brown. After about an hour, Sheriff Sam returned. We walked the line and told him about the lesson we had learned. He said, okay, you seem all right now, get on out of town. So we posted to the city limits and put the hammer down. Screeching tires, a cloud of smoke, and we were on our way. Two new reckless outlaws made a fishtail getaway. But as soon as we hit Vegas, we were once again detained. Acting on a tip we thought from our sheriff friend. They shut us down but let us go, there's nothing they could prove. So we headed straight down to the strip, find our Vegas groove. We gambled lots of money, saw some girly shows, but after a few days of this, it was time to go. We made it home in record time. Okay. Sorry. We made it home in record time, no roadside stops at all. I bet if we'd been entered, we'd have won the cannonball. Years later, I ran into Dan back here where we belong. I said I think about that trip each time I hear that song. Dan said me too, we should relive the wonder and the thrill. I said sure it's good, but I don't think we will. Standing on a corner in Windswept, Arizona, such a fine sight to see.
Okay, so that was amazing, right? Mike's always got the most hilarious songs to enjoy, for us to enjoy. Okay, so we're at the point of the night where we're going to have an intermission, but I would be remiss if I didn't do one other very important thank you. And I feel like since you're all like a captive audience at this moment, it's a good time to do it. I would like to thank the Indiana Arts Commission for the grant that they gave us to help us produce this book this year. It's why you have a hardback book. Not that you're finishing all the paperbacks, you know. And then in the next few months, I'm hoping we will release a paperback 2018 Polk Street Review. But for now, we have the hardback, and it's a big thrill. So on that note, we're going to put the house lights up. Everybody get up, walk around, hit the restroom, look at the artwork,